Canada's housing market isn't cooling.
A new report out this morning says taxes are the biggest expense for Canadian families.
The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation is going back more than 75 years to look for inspiration.
To be frank, it takes too long and it costs too much to build houses in Ontario.
New research from RBC shows that buying a home in Canada has never been so unaffordable.
Something's gone terribly wrong in the Great White North. Once a country praised for its affordability, safety, and high quality of life, Canada is now facing a full-blown affordability crisis. From housing to groceries, rent to interest rates, life in Canada has never been more expensive, and for many, simply surviving has become a luxury. So what happened? Let's start with the big one. Housing. In 2000, the average price of a home in Canada was just under $164,000. Fast forward to 2025, and the national average is hovering around $730,000. In Vancouver and Toronto, two of the country's largest cities, the average home price exceeds $1 million. In fact, in Vancouver, it's closer to $1.2 million. We're not talking about a mansion, we're talking about a modest detached house in the suburbs. Wages, on the other hand, haven't kept pace. While housing prices have increased by over 300% in the last 2 decades, average wages have risen by less than 60%. In cities like Toronto, the average annual income ranges from $45,000 to $60,000. That means owning a home is not just difficult, it's mathematically impossible for most young people. Renting isn't any better. The average one-bedroom rental in Toronto costs more than $2,500 a month. In Vancouver, it's close to $3,000. These aren't penthouses with ocean views. We're talking about small apartments often shared between 2 or 3 roommates. A minimum wage earner would need to work over 80 hours a week just to afford that rent, leaving virtually nothing for food, transport, or savings. Canada's immigration policy is one of the most ambitious in the world. In 2023 alone, the country welcomed over 430,000 new permanent residents, with similar targets set for the next several years. While immigration is essential for economic growth and population stability, it has also outpaced the country's ability to build homes and infrastructure. According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the country needs to build over 3.5 million new homes by 2030 just to restore affordability. That's more than double the current pace of construction. And yet, red tape, zoning restrictions, labor shortages, and rising material costs have made it nearly impossible to catch up. The result? More people, not enough homes, skyrocketing demand, and prices that continue to soar. It's not just housing. Grocery prices have climbed dramatically, largely due to global inflation, supply chain disruptions, and climate-related crop failures. According to Canada's Food Price Report, a family of 4 is expected to spend over $16,000 on groceries in 2025, an increase of nearly $1,000 from just 2 years ago. Staples like bread, milk, eggs, and produce have all seen significant price jumps. A dozen eggs, which used to cost under $3, now regularly go for $5 or more. Milk is edging towards $7 a jug in some provinces. These may seem like small hikes, but they add up quickly, especially when rent is eating over half of your income. Meanwhile, utility costs, gas prices, and basic services are also on the rise. Car insurance in Ontario, for example, is among the highest in the country, and public transit fares have steadily increased in most major cities. Cell phone and internet plans in Canada are already some of the most expensive in the developed world, often costing over $100 a month for basic coverage. Canada's rental market has become a pressure cooker and is close to exploding. Vacancy rates in cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal are at record lows, hovering around or below 1%. That means renters have very few options, and landlords know it. The result? Soaring rents, bidding wars for apartments, and tenants being squeezed out of their neighborhoods. Many landlords are also using renovictions, a legal loophole where tenants are evicted under the guise of renovations only for the unit to reappear at a much higher rent shortly after. Rent control laws exist in provinces like Ontario, but they don't apply to units built after 2018, which leaves many renters vulnerable to sudden and extreme increases. The stress of not knowing if you'll be able to renew your lease, or even afford to move if you can't, is now part of everyday life for millions of Canadians. For students, new immigrants, and low-income families, this often means living in unsafe or overcrowded conditions just to survive. Rent was once seen as a stepping stone to homeownership. Today it's a financial trap. And for those unlucky enough to lose their housing, Canada's shelter systems are already overwhelmed. The line between housed and homeless is growing thinner by the day. For many Canadians, wages simply haven't kept up with inflation. While the cost of living has soared, paychecks have remained largely stagnant, especially in entry-level and mid-level jobs. The minimum wage varies by province, ranging from around $14 to $17 per hour. But even the higher end of that spectrum barely covers the basics. A full-time worker earning $17 an hour makes roughly $2,900 a month before taxes. After rent, food, transit, and utilities, they're likely left with little to nothing. Saving for the future, investing, taking a vacation. For many, those have become distant dreams. And let's not forget the gig economy, which has exploded in Canada. While flexible, these jobs often come without benefits, stability, or predictable income. Even white-collar workers are not immune to layoffs and contract-based employment. Job security is becoming increasingly rare, and workers are paying the price. Are you living through this affordability crisis? Tell us where you're from, how much you pay in rent, and what you think needs to change. Your voice matters, and sharing your story might help others feel less alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a real conversation. With affordability plummeting, many Canadians have turned to credit just to stay afloat. As of 2024, household debt-to-income ratios are among the highest in the G7, sitting at over 180%. That means for every dollar of disposable income, the average Canadian owes $1.80. Credit card debt is rising, payday loan use has increased, and student loan debt continues to burden a generation that was promised prosperity through education. Mortgage debt especially is a ticking time bomb, particularly with interest rates having risen sharply over the last 2 years in response to global inflation. The Bank of Canada's benchmark interest rate was under 1% just a few years ago. Now it sits at 5%. That means mortgage payments have nearly doubled for many homeowners, with some facing payment hikes of $800 to $1,500 a month. For those who bought at the peak of the market, the dream of homeownership is turning into a financial nightmare. Many Canadians feel abandoned by policymakers. While various federal and provincial governments have rolled out housing plans and affordability measures, most have been reactive and poorly coordinated. The First Home Savings Account, tax credits, and rental assistance programs may offer relief, but they don't address the systemic issues at play. Municipalities are often stuck in a tug-of-war between developers, NIMBY opposition, and slow zoning reforms. Meanwhile, real estate speculation and foreign investment, though now more regulated, have already done their damage by inflating housing markets over the past decade. Canadians want action. They want homes, not handouts. They want transparency, accountability, and above all, they want to believe that the future will be better than the present. But that faith is starting to crack. It's easy to talk about affordability in dollars and percentages, but what's harder to quantify is the mental toll. Constant financial anxiety is taking a severe emotional and psychological toll on Canadians across the country. Young adults are putting off major life milestones, not because they don't want them, but because they simply can't afford them. Mental health professionals have seen a sharp rise in anxiety and depression linked to financial stress, particularly among millennials and Gen Z. The feeling of working hard but never getting ahead has created a kind of economic nihilism where people feel hopeless about the future, disconnected from the idea that things will ever improve. And it's not just the young. Seniors on fixed incomes are watching their purchasing power shrink with every grocery trip. Parents are working multiple jobs just to cover the basics. Families are cutting corners on essentials like medications, heat, and food. This crisis isn't just about economics, it's about dignity. The mental health fallout of not being able to afford a decent life is very real. And unless Canada addresses both the root financial issues and the emotional damage being caused, this affordability crisis will leave scars that last for generations. Canada used to be a place where you could build a future. Now just surviving feels like a full-time job. If something doesn't change soon, we're looking at a generation priced out of their own country. Affordability isn't a luxury, it's a right. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting content.